Welcome to Heart of a Soldier, where courage meets the unknown, and some treasures are too dangerous to possess. Tonight's story takes us from the ancient ruins of Iraq to the modern battlefields of the War on Terror, following an artifact that has claimed more lives than enemy fire. This is the tale of the Medal of Babylon, a relic that promises power but delivers only darkness. Sergeant First Class Marcus Webb never believed in curses. A rational man from Detroit with a degree in archaeology, he volunteered for artifact recovery missions in Iraq because he wanted to protect historical sites from looters. That pragmatic worldview lasted until he found a medallion buried beneath the ruins of ancient Babylon. The artifact was about the size of a silver dollar, made from some kind of dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Cuneiform script covered both sides, surrounding a central image that appeared to shift and change when viewed from different angles. "Sarge, you need to see this," called Private Rodriguez from across the excavation site. "There's a whole chamber down here." Webb climbed down into what appeared to be a tomb that predated even the famous ruins above. By his estimation, the chamber was at least 4,000 years old, filled with artifacts that would revolutionize understanding of Mesopotamian civilization. But it was the wall carvings that made his blood run cold. Dozens of warriors were depicted holding the same medallion he'd found, and in each carving, the warrior stood alone among fields of corpses. The story told by the images was clear. Whoever possessed the medallion became an unstoppable warrior, but everyone around them died. "Rodriguez, we need to document everything and call this in to the archaeological team," Webb said, slipping the medallion into his pocket without thinking. That was his first mistake. The attack came 3 hours later. Webb's unit was securing the archaeological site when insurgents launched a coordinated assault from 3 directions. What should have been a slaughter of the outnumbered Americans instead became something else entirely. Webb found himself moving with impossible speed and precision. His M4 rifle seemed to aim itself, every shot finding its mark. He anticipated enemy movements before they happened, ducked incoming fire a split second before it arrived, and fought with the skill of a warrior who had trained for centuries. When the smoke cleared, 37 insurgents lay dead, and Webb's unit had suffered only 1 casualty. Private Rodriguez had been standing right behind Webb when a sniper's bullet meant for the sergeant inexplicably curved around Webb and struck the young soldier in the heart. "How did that happen?" Corporal Johnson asked, staring at the impossible trajectory of the fatal bullet. The shot came from the north, but Rodriguez was hit from the south. Webb pulled the medallion from his pocket, feeling its weight like a stone in his stomach. The metal was warm now, almost hot, and the carvings seemed to pulse with dark energy. "I don't know," Webb lied, but he was beginning to suspect. Chapter 3. The pattern emerges. Over the next month, Webb's unit became legendary throughout the theater of operations. They won every engagement, completed every mission, and never took casualties from enemy fire. But they kept losing men. Johnson died when his Humvee inexplicably rolled over on perfectly flat ground, right after Webb had dismounted to check their route. Private Michaels was killed by a mortar round that misfired from a friendly position and somehow landed exactly where he was standing, 300 meters away from the intended target. Each death was classified as an accident, a mechanical failure, or friendly fire. Each death followed the same pattern. The fatal blow was meant for Webb, but somehow struck the soldier closest to him instead. "Sarge, we need to talk," said Staff Sergeant Patricia Coleman, Webb's second-in-command. "The men are spooked. They're saying you're cursed." "That's superstitious nonsense," Webb replied, but his hand instinctively moved to the medallion hanging around his neck. He'd started wearing it after Rodriguez's death, telling himself it was to keep it secure for the archaeological team. "Is it? Webb, you've been in 17 firefights in the last month. You haven't taken so much as a scratch, but 7 of our brothers are dead. You want to explain that?" Webb couldn't explain it without sounding insane. How could he tell Coleman that he'd found a 4,000-year-old artifact that apparently made him invincible while condemning everyone around him to death? Unable to sleep, haunted by the faces of his dead soldiers, Webb spent his off-duty hours researching the medallion. Using the base's internet connection, he delved into archaeological databases, ancient texts, and historical records. What he found terrified him. References to similar artifacts appeared throughout history. always associated with legendary warriors who won impossible battles but died alone. Achilles, who was invincible in combat but watched all his companions die. Roland, who single-handedly held off an army at Rongsvo but could not save his men. The pattern was consistent across cultures and centuries. The artifact granted its bearer supernatural combat abilities, but it fed on the life force of those around them. Webb found a translation of an ancient Babylonian text that described the medallion's creation. Marduk's general, Tiamat, forged 13 medallions from the heart of a dying star, each imbued with the essence of war itself. The bearer becomes the perfect warrior, but the medallions hunger for blood. They will not be satisfied with enemy blood alone. They must consume the souls of those the bearer holds dear. 13 medallions. Webb wondered where the other 12 were, and how many soldiers throughout history had died because of them. Webb's first instinct was to get rid of the medallion, but every attempt failed in increasingly disturbing ways. When he tried to throw it away, he found it back in his pocket the next morning. When he tried to bury it, the ground itself seemed to reject it, pushing the artifact back to the surface overnight. When he tried to destroy it with thermite, the explosion somehow left the medallion completely intact, while destroying everything around it, including the bunker where he'd conducted the experiment. The medallion wanted to be worn. It wanted to be used, and every day Webb kept it. He could feel its influence growing stronger. His shooting improved beyond human capability. His reflexes became superhuman. His tactical awareness expanded to an almost precognitive level. He was becoming the perfect soldier, but the cost kept mounting. Word of Webb's unit's extraordinary combat record spread throughout the military. He was recommended for promotion, for medals, for transfer to elite special operations units. Commanders wanted to study his tactics, to learn from his success. What they didn't know was that the curse was beginning to spread. Officers who worked closely with Webb started experiencing the same phenomenon. They became incredibly effective in combat, but their subordinates began dying in accidents and equipment failures. Colonel Bradley Matthews, who had personally decorated Webb for valor, lost his entire staff in a helicopter crash, a helicopter that had been maintained perfectly and was flying in perfect weather. The crash happened while Matthews was on leave, visiting his family in Kansas. Captain Lisa Torres, who had studied Webb's after-action reports, watched her entire company get wiped out by a single IED, an explosion that somehow left her completely unharmed while killing 37 soldiers around her. The medallion's influence was spreading like a virus, infecting anyone who came into close contact with its bearer. Dr. Amelia Rashid was a civilian contractor specializing in ancient Middle Eastern artifacts. When reports of Webb's medallion reached the archaeological community, she flew to Iraq specifically to examine it. Sergeant Webb, what you've found is one of the most dangerous artifacts in human history, she said, after studying the medallion for hours. This isn't just a piece of ancient jewelry. It's a weapon of mass destruction disguised as a blessing. Can you destroy it? No. But I can tell you what it really does. The medallion doesn't just protect you and kill your allies. It's harvesting their life force to make you stronger. Every person who dies near you makes the medallion more powerful, which makes you more effective in combat, which leads to more deaths. Webb felt sick. How many people have died because of this thing? Throughout history, thousands, maybe tens of thousands. The medallion surfaces every few decades, usually during major wars. It finds a worthy bearer, creates a legendary warrior, and feeds off the carnage until either the bearer dies or figures out how to pass it on. Pass it on. Dr. Rashid's expression was grim. The only way to be free of the medallion is to give it to someone else willingly. But doing so condemns that person to the same fate you've experienced. Webb now faced an ethical dilemma that had no right answer. He could keep the medallion and continue watching his brothers die, or he could pass it to someone else and condemn them to the same curse. The weight of 7 deaths pressed down on him like a physical force. Rodriguez, Johnson, Michaels Parker, Davis, Chun, and Williams. All good soldiers, all killed by proximity to a cursed artifact. But the medallion was also making him incredibly effective at saving other lives. His superhuman combat abilities had protected hundreds of civilians, prevented successful terrorist attacks, and eliminated high-value targets that normal soldiers couldn't reach. Was it worth sacrificing his unit to save hundreds of strangers? The trolley problem with supernatural horror, he muttered to himself, referencing a philosophical thought experiment he'd studied in college. Dr. Rashid overheard him. That's exactly what it is, Sergeant. And there's no right answer. Chapter 9. The Sacrifice. The decision was made for Webb during what became known as the Tikrit Incident. His unit was supporting a rescue mission to extract 23 American civilians trapped in a hospital overrun by ISIS fighters. The enemy had superior numbers, better positions, and had rigged the hospital with explosives. Webb realized that with the medallion's power, he could single-handedly clear the building and save all 23 hostages. Without it, some or all of the hostages would die, along with many of his soldiers. But using the medallion meant condemning his remaining men to death. Staff Sergeant Coleman made the choice for him. Sarge, whatever that thing is you're wearing, use it. Those people in there are counting on us. Webb looked at his remaining soldiers. 8 men who had become his family over the past year. They didn't know about the curse, but they trusted him completely. I'm sorry, he whispered, and let the medallion's power flow through him. What followed was 45 minutes of supernatural combat. Webb moved through the hospital like an avenging angel, eliminating terrorists with impossible precision while bullets seemed to bend around him. He saved all 23 hostages without a scratch. Behind him, his 8 remaining soldiers died in ways that defied physics and probability. Ricochet bullets that changed direction mid-flight. Grenades that rolled uphill. Structural collapses that affected only specific individuals while leaving everything around them intact. Webb emerged from the hospital, a hero and a monster, carrying 23 rescued civilians and the weight of 15 dead brothers. 3 days later, Webb was visited by a person he hadn't expected. General Patricia, one of the highest-ranking officers in the theater. Sergeant Webb, I know what you're carrying. Webb's hand moved instinctively to the medallion. Ma'am, my grandfather carried the same artifact during World War II. He was a legend in the Pacific Theater. Single-handedly took 3 Japanese strongholds and saved over 1,000 American lives. It also killed his entire platoon, his best friend, and ultimately his wife and son in a car accident after the war. Webb stared at her. You know what it does. I know what it costs. My grandfather spent 30 years trying to destroy it before he realized the only way to be free was to pass it on. He gave it to a young officer named Lieutenant Morrison during the Korean War. What happened to Morrison? He became a legendary Special Forces operator. Also watched his entire team die in accidents over the course of 2 years. Morrison passed it to a Captain Rodriguez during Vietnam. The name hit Webb like a punch to the gut. Rodriguez, father of the Private Rodriguez who died in your unit 3 months ago. The medallion has a way of coming full circle, Sergeant. It seeks out worthy warriors, but it also seeks revenge on those who try to escape its influence. General Hayes pulled out a sealed envelope. Morrison documented everything before he passed the medallion on. Every bearer, every death, every attempt to destroy it. There have been 43 confirmed bearers since World War II alone. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm dying, Sergeant. Cancer. 6 months, maybe less, and I've spent my entire career preparing for this moment. Webb understood immediately. You want me to give it to you? I want you to give it to someone who's going to die anyway. Someone who can use its power for one final mission before the curse becomes irrelevant. General Hayes' final mission was classified at the highest levels, but Webb was read into the operation as her only support personnel. A terrorist cell had acquired nuclear materials and was planning to detonate a dirty bomb in downtown Baghdad. The device was hidden in a fortified compound that would normally require an entire battalion to assault successfully. General Hayes, now bearing the medallion, would go in alone. The beauty of being terminally ill, she told Webb as they prepared for the mission, is that the curse can't take anything from me that I wasn't already going to lose. But the medallion had other ideas. Instead of killing Hayes directly, it began targeting her family back in the United States. Her daughter's plane was delayed by mechanical failure and then crashed when it finally took off. Her son-in-law died in a freak accident at his office. Her grandchildren, ... It's adapting, Hayes realized with horror. The curse is learning that I don't value my own life, so it's taking the lives I do value. Webb made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "Give it back to me, General. I'll complete the mission." "Sergeant, that's not. It's not your choice anymore, ma'am. I won't let it hurt your family." Webb took the medallion back, feeling its familiar weight and warmth. The curse immediately shifted back to him, but the damage to Hayes' family had already been done. Webb completed the mission, neutralizing the nuclear threat with supernatural efficiency. But the cost was higher than ever before. Not just his support team, but random civilians in the area who died in increasingly elaborate accidents. A construction crane collapsed, killing its operator. A gas leak explosion killed an entire family. A bus driver suffered a heart attack and crashed into a market, killing dozens. The medallion was growing stronger, hungrier, less discriminating in its choice of victims. Dr. Rashid's final communication to Webb contained a chilling revelation. The medallions weren't just weapons, they were a test. Ancient civilizations created them to see if humanity was worthy of survival. Each medallion that isn't destroyed makes the others more powerful. When all 13 are active simultaneously, they trigger something called the Final War, a conflict that ends only when one person remains alive on Earth. Webb realized that he wasn't just cursed, he was part of an ancient doomsday device that was slowly activating as more medallions found bearers around the world. According to Dr. Rashid's research, at least 7 of the 13 medallions were currently active, carried by soldiers, mercenaries, and warlords across the globe. Each bearer thought they were uniquely cursed, not realizing they were part of a larger apocalyptic pattern. The final war was coming, and Webb was helping to bring it about. The story of the Medal of Babylon reminds us that some powers come with prices too terrible to pay. In our desire to protect those we love, we sometimes embrace forces that ultimately destroy everything we hold dear. Somewhere in the world tonight, soldiers carry burdens heavier than any weapon, curses disguised as blessings, and power that corrupts not through greed, but through love. They fight to save lives while watching death follow in their footsteps, trapped in an ancient game whose rules were written in blood and starlight. The Medal of Babylon remains active, passed from warrior to warrior, century to century, adding names to a list that began in ancient Mesopotamia and may end with the last human being on Earth. This is Heart of a Soldier, where courage sometimes comes at the cost of everything we fight to protect. Until next time, remember that the greatest battles are not always fought against enemies we can see, and the deadliest weapons are sometimes the ones that promise to make us heroes. Some victories cost more than defeat, and some treasures are curses in disguise.